I swear, I'm not the kind of guy who believes in ghosts. I'm a middle school math teacher, my wife Megan's a nurse, and we've got 2 kids, Lily, 11, and Max, 6. We're just a regular suburban family. We watch the news. We pay taxes. We don't mess around with Ouija boards or go looking for haunted houses. That's why this whole thing still shakes me up every time I think about it. We moved into the house in late October, yeah, right around Halloween. I know how that sounds. We weren't trying to be creepy or ironic or anything. It just worked out that way with the closing and Megan's schedule. The house was a 2-story colonial style on the edge of a small town in Ohio. You know the type: white wood siding, navy shutters, big wraparound porch with hanging flower pots. It sat at the end of a long road lined with red maples. The leaves were all turning when we got there, orange, rust, this vivid deep red that looked like blood in the late afternoon sun. The previous owners were this older couple, the Bransons. They were moving to Florida to be closer to their kids. They seemed perfectly normal, quiet, polite. The man, Doug, handed me the keys and said, half joking, "Hope you like company," but I thought he meant neighbors or raccoons or something. He smiled a little too long when he said it, now that I look back. But I didn't think much of it at the time. We spent the first few days unpacking boxes and setting up furniture. Megan was obsessed with arranging the dining room just right. She bought these old antique chairs off Facebook Marketplace that she thought added character to the house. There were 6 of them, all slightly mismatched but clearly from the same era. Kind of rustic, worn but elegant. She lined them up around the long wooden table under this brass chandelier that always gave off a weird, flickery glow even after I swapped out the bulbs. I remember the first time I noticed something off. It was maybe the 3rd night. I came downstairs at around 2 a.m. because I'd heard Max crying in his room. He has these night terrors sometimes. After I checked on him and got him settled back to sleep, I wandered into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. I walked past the dining room and just paused. Something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it at first, but the air in there, it was colder. Like a refrigerator door had been open. And then I noticed the chairs. They weren't where we'd left them. 2 of them were pulled out, like someone had just been sitting there. One was turned completely sideways. I figured maybe Megan had been up late and moved them, or maybe the kids had been playing earlier. But it was strange. Too strange. She's a neat freak about stuff like that. The next morning, I asked her about it. She shook her head. No, I didn't touch them. And Lily knows better than to mess with the dining room. She's terrified of you when you're cranky about furniture. We both laughed it off. That was mistake number 1. That day, I moved the chairs back in place. Perfectly aligned. But the next night? Same thing. This time, 3 were out. 2 more turned at odd angles. One was almost halfway into the living room. Still, we told ourselves it had to be the kids. Or maybe the house settling. Old homes creak and shift, right? Maybe the floorboards were warped. But by night 5, I started getting this feeling. Not just confusion, unease. Like someone was trying to communicate. Like something was watching us rearrange the room every morning and waiting for us to notice. Lily came down the stairs one morning, clutching her stuffed bunny, and said, "Daddy, why do the chairs move every night?" My blood ran cold. I crouched down and said, "What do you mean, sweetheart?" She looked me dead in the eye. "I hear them. They scrape across the floor, real slow. Every night. I can't sleep when they start moving." Megan and I exchanged this look that I can't even describe. Equal parts fear, disbelief, and this nagging guilt that maybe we'd been brushing it off too long. That night, I set up one of our security cameras, the indoor kind we used to have in the nursery when Max was a baby. I set it up in the corner of the dining room, facing the table. just to prove to ourselves we were being paranoid. But what we saw the next morning changed everything. The next morning, I woke up early, like 5:30 a.m., before the kids were up. My stomach was in knots. I didn't want to admit it, but I was scared to check the camera. I had this awful feeling, like something was going to be there, and once I saw it, there'd be no going back. But I had to know. I grabbed my laptop, opened the camera app, and scrubbed through the overnight footage. At first, nothing. 11 p.m., quiet. 12:30 a.m., still. 1:15 a.m., a flicker of motion in the corner, but it was just headlights passing outside. 2:02 a.m., that's when it happened. It started with the chair at the head of the table, the one I always sat in. It shifted. Slowly. Dragged itself maybe 3 inches backward across the hardwood floor. No one in sight. No movement from anywhere else in the room. I thought maybe it was a camera glitch, some kind of weird compression artifact. But then the second chair moved. Then the third. Not all at once, one by one. The scraping sound was faint but unmistakable. That horrible dry wood grind, slow and deliberate, like someone dragging fingernails down a violin string. By 2:07 a.m., 4 of the 6 chairs had moved out from the table. And then, the last chair, Max's, the one with the booster seat still strapped to it, turned. Not just pulled out, but twisted a full 90 degrees toward the hallway. Toward the stairs. Toward the kids' rooms. I slammed the laptop shut. For a solid 30 seconds, I just sat there, hands clenched, breathing like I'd run a mile. I wasn't prepared for how violating it felt. Like something had come into our home in the middle of the night and played with our things. With our lives. I woke Megan up. She's not an easy person to rattle, years in ER shifts will do that, but when she saw the footage, her face drained of all color. "I want to get rid of those damn chairs," she said quietly. And we tried. That same day, we loaded them up in the SUV and drove them to a local antique consignment store. Didn't even ask for money, just wanted them gone. The guy at the shop looked at them like they were museum pieces. He said something like, "They don't make wood like this anymore. You sure you want to get rid of them?" Yes. Very sure. We got a basic set from IKEA that night and laughed nervously about fresh starts. That was the night we made mistake number 2. Because at 2:03 a.m., the camera, still running, showed all 6 new chairs slowly sliding out from the table. Megan cried when she saw it. I don't think she even realized it. She just stood there at the counter in her robe, tears running down her face, the laptop screen flickering in the dark. I tried to say something, but what do you even say at that point? It wasn't the furniture. It was the house. And whatever was in it wasn't interested in hiding anymore. That morning, Max told us he saw a man with no eyes standing at the bottom of the stairs. He was real tall, Max said, his voice so casual it made my skin crawl. He was looking at the dining room. Megan started sleeping with the bedroom door locked after that. Not that it mattered. 3 days later, I came downstairs and found all 6 chairs, every single one, arranged in a perfect semicircle at the bottom of our stairs, all facing the hallway. Like they were waiting. We hadn't touched them. And the kids swore they hadn't either. We were being watched. And whoever, or whatever, it was, it wanted us to know. That's when I started hearing footsteps at night. Heavy ones. Like work boots. 1 step at a time across the upstairs landing. Then a pause. Then again. Like someone pacing. But always at the same time, around 2 a.m. I checked the kids. I checked the hallway. I even opened the attic once. No one. But every single night, without fail, we'd wake up to chairs moved. Slightly different positions each time. Once, they were arranged in a line like a waiting room. Another time, they were all turned to face the front door. And one night, I'll never forget this, they were stacked on top of each other, balancing impossibly in the center of the table, like some kind of sick sculpture. That's when Megan said it, we need to call someone. She meant a priest. I wasn't raised religious, but at that point, I'd have let a medieval knight in full armor come bless the place if it meant we could sleep through the night. We didn't know it then, but calling him would only make things worse. That we called Father Adrian the next morning. He wasn't from our parish, we're not exactly regular churchgoers, but a friend of Megan's from the hospital gave us his number. Said he handled stuff like this sometimes. He showed up the next day around 3 p.m., right as the sun was hitting the trees outside in that eerie orange way it always did. He was maybe in his early 50s. Thin, polite, wore a black overcoat over his collar and had this tired but kind look, like someone who'd seen way more than he'd ever wanted to. Megan had made coffee. The kids were at school. We sat in the kitchen while I showed him the footage on my laptop. He didn't flinch. Didn't act surprised. Just nodded slowly and said, "How long has this been going on?" "About a week," I told him. "It started with the chairs. Now it's footsteps, cold spots. The baby monitor keeps picking up whispers from rooms where no one is." Father Adrian set the cup down and stood up. "Let me take a walk through the house." I followed him room to room. He walked slow, almost reverent, like the place was a chapel. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then we got to the dining room. He stopped dead in the doorway. The chairs were all neatly tucked in, we made sure of it before he arrived, but he just stood there, staring at them. "Did you get these chairs recently?" he asked. "No," I said. "We got rid of the old ones. These are new." He walked up to one and placed his hand on the back of it. His lips moved slightly. I realized he was whispering a prayer. And then, I swear to God, the chair moved. Just a nudge. Maybe an inch. But it moved. Right under his hand. I backed up, bumping into the doorframe. Father Adrian's face didn't change. He just sighed, like he'd seen it all before. "This presence," he said softly, "it's not tied to an object. It's in the walls. The ground. It was here before you." Megan came in then, pale as paper. She'd been listening from the hallway. "So what do we do?" she asked. Her voice cracked. "I'll bless the house," he said. "But I need you to understand something, this might not go the way you hope." We agreed anyway. What else were we gonna do? He went room to room with his silver crucifix and a small bottle of holy water, muttering Latin prayers. I don't know what I expected, chanting, thunder, smoke, but it was quiet. Almost boring. Until we got to our bedroom. He stepped inside, sprinkled water toward the closet, and the bulb in the ceiling light burst, a loud pop that made Megan scream. Glass rained down on the carpet. Max's toy truck, sitting on the dresser, fell off and hit the ground, even though no one was near it. That night, we felt calm. For the first time in over a week, nothing moved. No footsteps. No chair scraping. The camera showed nothing but stillness. We thought it worked. We were wrong. The next night, we went to bed around 10. Megan was asleep almost immediately. I stayed up reading, still a little wired. Around 2:15 a.m., I heard a sound from downstairs. Not scraping. Thumping. Heavy, slow thuds, like someone was dragging something dense across the floor. I crept down the stairs, phone flashlight trembling in my hand. And there they were. All 6 chairs, from the dining room, now lined up in front of our bedroom door. Not downstairs. Upstairs. Outside our bedroom. Perfectly arranged. No scratches on the floor. No scuffs on the walls. Nothing to show how they got there. But they were just there, as if they'd walked up on their own. I stood there, frozen, heart pounding in my ears. Then I noticed something else. The door to Max's room? Slightly open. He always kept it shut because he was afraid of the hallway at night. I walked in, shaking. He was sitting up in bed, wide-eyed. He came upstairs, Max whispered. "Who?" I asked, kneeling beside him. "The tall man," he said. He looked at your door and smiled. Megan was already packing her bag by morning. We weren't just scared anymore. We were being hunted. I wish I could say things got better after that night, but they didn't. They got worse. The chairs, those cursed chairs, weren't the only thing moving now. The house felt like it was alive. Every floorboard creaked at the wrong time, every door seemed to slam shut on its own. The air had this sticky weight to it, like something was pressing down on your chest. Like a heavy, invisible hand was always hovering just behind you. By the time we hit the fourth night after Father Adrian left, Megan and I were both running on empty. Sleep-deprived. Irritable. We couldn't escape the sense of presence that clung to us, following us from room to room. That night, it wasn't just the chairs that made us snap. It was everything. I woke up to the sound of my own breath, shallow, jagged, and I realized I'd been holding it. I looked over at Megan. Her eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling. She hadn't moved. "What is it?" I whispered. She didn't answer at first. But then her voice came, strained, tight. "I don't know, but something's in here." I sat up, heart pounding. It wasn't the first time we'd felt it, but this time, it was different. The air had turned cold, like we were standing at the edge of a frozen lake, the kind of cold that sinks into your bones. And that wasn't the worst part. It was the whispering. I thought it was just the wind at first, maybe a draft slipping through the cracks. But then it got louder. Closer. Not like a voice. More like 1,000 little voices, all speaking at once, just outside our door. I jumped out of bed and grabbed the handle. It was locked. We had locked it. I slammed my shoulder against the door, but it wouldn't budge. Then I heard it. The scratching. Not like nails on a chalkboard. No. This was the sound of something digging, like claws tearing through the drywall, scraping along the wood. Right outside our door. And then, another thud. This time from Max's room. A deep, heavy impact, like something had fallen. I didn't even think. I yanked the door open, but there was nothing there. Just a hallway, empty and silent, save for the still, cold air that seemed to follow me. I ran to Max's room, but when I opened the door, the room was empty. Max was gone. His bed was made. His stuffed animals were neatly arranged, his little toy truck placed exactly where he'd left it. But Max? Nowhere. I felt the ground slip beneath me. I called his name, my voice cracking. "Max! Max, where are you?" Nothing. Not a sound. I ran down the stairs. The living room. The kitchen. The garage. Every damn room. Nothing. I was about to head back upstairs when I heard it. Faint at first. Almost like a murmur. Like he was calling for me. It was coming from the basement. The door stood ajar, creaking on its hinges. I don't know why I went down there. I don't know what made me think it was a good idea to go into that dark, suffocating pit. But I couldn't not look. I needed to find him. The basement was exactly what you'd expect, old stone walls, the air thick with mildew, the smell of damp wood. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, flickering, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and move. And then, in the far corner, I saw him. Max was standing there. Not moving. just staring at something in the shadows. I rushed over, grabbed him by the shoulders, and shook him. "Max! What are you doing down here?" He turned to me slowly. His face was pale. His eyes were wide open, but they were empty. Not him. But it was his voice that came out next. "Daddy," he said. "I see him again. He wants to play with me." I spun around. The air in the basement felt even colder now, and I could swear I saw something in the corner, something tall, thin, with dark eyes. But when I blinked, it was gone. I don't know how I did it, but I grabbed Max, ran upstairs, and slammed the door behind us. I turned to Megan. She was standing in the doorway to our room, her face white as paper. "I heard him," she whispered. I heard his voice. We didn't even pack. We didn't stop to think. We just grabbed the kids, ran out the door, and never looked back. That was the last night we stayed there. We didn't stay in a hotel. We didn't stay with family. The fear was too raw, too real. I couldn't bring myself to go back to the house for one more night, even to pack our things. We just left. And we kept driving. It wasn't until the sun came up that we stopped. We found a little inn on the outskirts of town and took 2 rooms. The kids slept, Megan cried, and I just sat there, staring out the window at the unfamiliar world around us. It felt like we'd just woken up from a nightmare. For a week, we didn't talk about it. Not once. We thought maybe we'd escaped. Maybe it was over. And then we started getting the calls. The first one came 3 days after we left. My phone buzzed in the middle of the night. I remember checking the screen, unknown number, just like the ones that called from our house before we moved. I didn't pick up. But then the voicemail. The message was nothing but static, until, halfway through, I heard it. A voice. It was Max's. "Daddy, he's here. He's coming." I listened to it twice, just to make sure I wasn't losing it. I tried calling back. Nothing. No trace of the number. The second call came the next day. Same thing. But this time, it was Megan's voice, whispering. "I can hear him. He's in the room with me." We changed numbers. We tried everything we could think of. But the calls didn't stop. And they kept getting more specific. They started telling us things we never mentioned, things only the house would know. "Why won't you come back?" the message would say. "You left me behind." It was the house. It was as if it was alive, trying to pull us back. And the worst part? No one else could hear it. We went to the police. We filed reports. We even had a private investigator come out to look at the old house. But when they went there, it was just an empty lot. There was no house. No evidence of what had been there. The entire block had been bulldozed. We went to the town hall for answers, but they told us there was no record of any house ever existing at that address. It was as if it had never been real. At that point, I started questioning my own sanity. But then Max asked the one question I couldn't answer. "Why don't we just go back to the house, Daddy?" He told me he misses us. I couldn't sleep that night. Not after hearing those words. I spent the whole night pacing the floor, staring out at the darkness. The whole time, I felt like something was watching me, something waiting. I don't know if it's over. I don't know if we ever really escaped. A part of me believes it never will be. Because we left, yes. But whatever was in that house, it was part of us now. It followed us here. It follows me every time I close my eyes. I hear those whispers in the dark. I see the shadows creeping along the walls. I hear those chairs moving at night, just out of reach. And sometimes, just sometimes, when I look in the mirror, I think I see someone standing behind me. Tall. Thin. Eyes too dark to be human. So, yeah. I don't know what happened. Maybe the house wasn't even real. Maybe none of it was. But there's one thing I know for sure. It's not over.